Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about one of my side jobs that I do in the winter, and that, if you haven't guessed it already, is a zamboni driver. Now, this zamboni is pretty old. It's from the late 70s, and it's pretty crappy, but you know what? It does the job okay. It's missing a couple of functions. So before I get up in the gauges over there, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how this works. Now, this whole system right here is what's called a conditioner. And the conditioner pretty much does a couple of things. Let me take off the panels. So the first thing that it does is it cuts the ice. If you look down here, that is the blade going along the length of the conditioner. And after that snow, or that icy, or the layer of ice is cut, those augers right there, they push the cut off ice and snow into the center there, and then it throws it forward into that vertical auger. This is your horizontal, this is your vertical auger, and then it's collected and it goes up in the chute, and then it is shot up into your front snow tank. Now, this little square box that you see right here, that is in case you're dealing with especially wet snow and ice, and what will happen is it'll clog up the area around that auger. So what you do, you press down this little knob right here. That's that knob right there, and that'll just help clear out the auger right there. So it cuts the ice. That's the first thing it does. Now the second thing, which is no longer functional on this machine, is it lays down what's called wash water. Now wash water, if this machine was properly connected, would be this pipe right here, and that connects before the end of the box here. And I'll try and explain this the best I can. So on a normal regular zamboni machine, this is your final lay water, and then you have your wash water. Now what you do, you turn your wash water on and you turn on your water pump, and what the wash water does is it lays down water after you've cut the ice. And what it does is it helps fill in those really deep skate marks, right? So what happens is that water gets laid down, and then there's actually a squeegee back here. This squeegee, right? And then any excess water that is not placed in those ice skate cracks or lines is actually recycled into the wash water tank. So it's basically laying down water, filling in some of those deep ice skate marks, and then it's sucking up the excess into this. There's a front tank right here, which is located right along here, and then the process just continues. So that's your wash water cycle, and it's just to fill in the extremely deep cracks and stuff along those lines. And then after you go through your wash water phase, what happens, we have the final phase of the ice reconditioning process, which that is carried out by this tube right here, and you're pretty much always laying down hot water after you've gone through this process. The wash water, it can be cold. That's generally acceptable from what I've learned, but always the finishing layer of water, you want it to be hot water. So this finishing layer of water, this water line has a larger tank because you're laying down a lot more water and none of it's being recycled. So the water is shot out through a series of little holes right here, and the water is shot up right along here, so that way as I'm sitting up in my driver's seat, I can look down, and gauging by how high this water shoots out, I can then determine how much water I'm laying down. And then finally, after that water is laid down, it's smoothed over with this piece of felt, which we like to keep suspended. That way we don't get any rocks or debris in it, therefore causing a rougher smoothing of the ice. So that just helps, finish out that nice layer of ice or of water that we've laid down, and it makes it into a nice smooth layer of ice. So yeah, and to basically control that finishing layer of water, you have this handle right here, which it's just quarter turn handle, which that valve is actually on backwards, but you know what, it is what it is. So this you know what, just let me hop up here and we'll start going over everything. So this is your driver's seat. One other thing I'll show you while I'm down here is there's a ball valve right there, and that ball valve is for your wash tank, which even though the wash system isn't functional, the water pump on this is still functional. And the reason the water pump is functional, or the reason why we need to use the water pump, is because I'm servicing an outdoor ring, and on a day like today where it's rained, we have water out on the ice, which you'll see shortly. And that water pump will suck up that water and it will actually dump it in the front wash tank. So I'll suck up all the water off the ice, and then I'll drive off the ice, and then I'll drain it through that valve right there, if that makes sense, if you're following me so far. So moving on here, I'll start up on the gauges up here. You have your wash tank water level indicator, which that is actually broken. You have your water pump, which this light indicates if the water pump's on. You have a horn down here. I'm not sure what this gauge is for. It has something to do with the engine. You have your amp gauge for the engine, fuel gauge, high temperature, hot oil, or if the oil is too hot. You have your RPM gauge. You have your lights, which are no longer functional. And you have your starter, which in order to start this, you need to turn on your ignition, which turns on your fuel pump, I'm sure, and then it starts up. Now, what's interesting about this drive mechanism is the foot pedal is actually not your accelerator, that is actually your throttle. So as I press this down, that will increase the throttle. And for me to go forward, I need to push this forward. Now, the further forward I slide it, the faster I will go. Same thing in reverse. So that's the drive mechanism. Now, going down over to our right here, we have our hydraulics. The one on the far left is for the vertical auger, which is the one along the ground right there, which you can kind of faintly see. So if I pull that down, that'll turn that on. The second one over to the right is for the conditioner, which is the whole conditioning mechanism on the bottom. So if I push that forward, it'll raise it up, and if I push it down, it'll lower it down. Then we also have our horizontal auger, which is right along here. And like we said before, it kind of carries up the snow and it throws it in this front tank right here. And then finally we have our dump tank, which is this whole mechanism in the front, which is in essence a giant tank. And when you're ready to dump that, you just push that lever forward, and when you're ready to close it, you shove it back down. This is to make sure that that horizontal auger is clear if we were to ever get a clog, and I can always monitor that by looking down right from here. We have our finishing water, and then this device right here controls the pitch of the blade, so I can control how deep I cut into the ice. And as far as I know, that's pretty much most of how this thing works. Obviously, you have studded tires. Engine-wise, it's a Volkswagen engine. It's air-cooled. So you got to be careful you don't overheat this puppy. And then it just has a hydraulic pump on the other side, and basically hydraulics run this whole thing. It has an HDS transmission. What else can I say about this? You have a little bit of a wheel right here in case you're getting kind of close to the boards. That'll kind of bounce you back onto the ice if you come too close to the boards. So I've used it once. I've tapped it very lightly, but it did give me a good bounce and it threw me right back on track. You have your fuel tank, obviously. And just another thing to show you how jerry-rigged this thing is. This water pump acts like an AC compressor. So how this whole system works, you have your hydraulic drive pump, which drives the belt. Now that belt drives a couple things. It drives the horizontal auger, and it also drives this water pump. Now this water pump is activated through an electromagnetic clutch. So when I pull that water pump knob up there, it will send an electrical signal telling this clutch to engage down here, therefore turning on the water pump. However, the clutch on this thing has gone out. So the way that we've got around that is right now it's disengaged. So what has happened in order for it to work I know I'm kind of repeating myself, I sound kind of silly. We drilled a hole here and here, and we tapped them out. And what happens is we put some bolts in here, and then it's permanently on. So whenever you throw your bolts in there, the water pump is on permanently. So it's very important that whenever we turn on this motor, that we make sure we have water going to it. Which that hydraulic motor is only on when you engage your horizontal auger, if that makes sense. So yeah, other than that, if this thing were to die on the ice, there's actually a little pump right in here that you can insert a rod, and you pretty much can jack this this conditioner up. You also have your hydraulic fluid levels right there. There's your other hydraulic pump for your vertical auger, and that's about it. I mean, that's the best I can explain it. The suspension is pretty cool on this. You also have some leaf springs down there. The ice is bumpy, which definitely can be. It's very difficult to maintain an outdoor ring, so let's go check out the ice. Okay, so here we have the ice ring. Now, as you can see, that is not a really nice sheet of ice. That is actually water. It's actually a pretty decent amount of water on here. Yeah, there's a lot of water on here. And what the daytime crew has done on this ice ring is they piled snow along the edges of this ice ring in an attempt to keep the water concentrated in the middle, which it appears that it's actually done quite a good job. And now the reason that that is being done is because if this water starts flowing, what it'll do, it'll just kind of melt a hole wherever it's flowing, and it'll just it'll really do a lot more damage to the ice. So it's better to keep it kind of stagnant as opposed to flowing. It does less damage to the ice. Now, a little bit about this ice ring. This is an outdoor ring, as you could obviously tell. And the way this ice ring keeps frozen most of the time is not through the it naturally being cold, because those temperatures really fluctuate. This winter, we've had a hard time keeping this ice ring froze. So the way this whole system works is I'll take you over here. The first thing that's laid down is this dirt. It might be a specialized dirt, I'm not really sure. And then what happens is these pipes go throughout underneath the ice, and you have a supply line, and then it loops back around to this return line right here. And what's in these lines is something called glycol, which is, I guess you could call it a refrigerant, but it's a very environmentally friendly refrigerant. From what I've told from the guys that installed this, you could drink this and it would do pretty much no harm to you. So yeah, these pipes travel down along over there to larger diameter pipes, and then it goes up the stands over there, and then it goes to a giant chiller, which that is just basically a 3-system chiller. There's 3 different pumps, and on each of those 3 systems, it's just basically like giant radiators, and they pretty much cool down the fluid, and then it's pumped through, and it's returned, and then it repeats the cycle. And that will do most of the freezing until you get to about a certain temperature. Like today, it's around 50 degrees, and we've had rain, so this system is really struggling to keep up with this warm temperature. So my job now is to suck up this water, because this is cold water. And what's actually kind of interesting about ice rings and water thermodynamics in general is cold water takes a lot longer to freeze than hot water. I'm not exactly sure, the science behind it, but that's honestly how it works. So I'll hop on the Zamboni, I'll throw on the GoPro, and we'll catch some of the action here.